Welcome to another edition of the Dementia Care Partner Talk Show. Now, here's dementia care expert Teepa Snow and your host, Greg Phelps.
Teepa, there's a story in our Canadian news a few days ago about a store clerk noticing an elderly gentleman. He was struggling with a Bitcoin machine while talking on his cell phone. So the clerk in that store asked if she could help and quickly figured out that the man was about to be scammed. And we've all seen stories on the news like this, or thieves are using AI to sound like a relative who's in trouble and needs money. How do we protect our loved ones from any scams like this? Because these con artists are pretty convincing. And I'll throw in one more. A friend of mine is a retired RCMP sergeant, that's our National Police Force, got a call and he was thinking it was his daughter. And then all of a sudden he just went, wait a minute, they just about conned him. They're that good.
Yeah.
So
And
how
with
do
this,
we...
yeah, I mean, it's really tricky. So calling a pause and just getting curious first. But what that means is you have to be willing to put yourself in a situation that might be a little uncomfortable, which is basically presenting yourself where the person can see or hear you and go, oh, hey, Greg, it's Teepa. I have a question. I noticed you're trying to use this device, or I noticed that you're talking to somebody on the phone. I hate to interrupt you. I could use your help right now for just a second. And so rather than, can I help you do something? And when I don't know that what you're doing is a safe thing to do, I'm going to call a pause. And I think one of our biggest missing pieces is just to pause first before we get the person to pause with us, and then get curious about what might be happening and realize, you know, this is tricky, but it's also dangerous because the number of situations that are coming up is increasing dramatically. And there's fiscal issues, there's emotional issues, there's actually people are losing their homes. Sometimes people move in and they just take over, and then they eventually get the other person out because they get them to sign off on things, or they get them to give over things, or they get them to give them access to things. And people living with dementia are the most vulnerable of all. So guess what you have to do, which the clerk did, get close enough to notice something's going on here that doesn't seem quite right. And not like, oh, Greg, no, don't do that. What are you doing? I mean, we talked in our hoarding episode about, like, be careful how you enter with curiosity and support rather than judgment.
So this isn't one of a lot of our subjects. You could sort of involve perhaps the person who may be the victim, but this is more aimed at care providers and families, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I don't think Dad with dementia is really going to want me to sit down and explain to him what's happening in the world with artificial intelligence and how they can replicate your voice. And so they're gone. They're zoned out, right? Like, I don't understand it.
What are you talking about? I don't understand. I mean, it's my daughter. Can't you get that it's my daughter? And it's like, well, it is my daughter. I mean, it's her face. And and these deep fakes, I mean, we know that people can be tricked, and it doesn't take that much to trick us. I mean, look at the media. So what I'd say is, yeah, this is a time to go, I think we need to figure out who I can trust and move into a space of curiosity, but I've got to do a little background checking here. I can't assume things. I've got to assess things. So, if somebody's asking, always what makes me, so if you could give me your number for how you access your bank account, and then I'll be able to check the amount and see whether or not someone is taking money out that shouldn't be taking money out. But I'll need your code because I can't do it without that. Now, do I sound like I'm being helpful, Greg?
Oh yeah, you're very helpful. Oh yeah, Teepa, thank you very much for looking after that for me. Teepa, where'd you go? Teepa,
Yeah.
where'd you go?
Well, and guess who's better at that than a family member who said, Dad, what do you mean you gave your code to somebody? See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to take over the account because you're not competent to do the account. So if I try that, here's the tricky part. I may push you closer to the people that are the ones who are risky because I don't recognize in myself my fear, my distress, and I push at you, and that just makes it harder for us to work together. Bummer.
This is one of these topics where I think we need to talk now, because the further you progress along the journey from, various gem states are simply, you're not going to be able to communicate. You're not going to get this point across.
Right. And I think and this is the tricky part, out of every 4 cases of fraud or abuse, financial or ethical, one in 4 is somebody who's well known and close to the individual. So what that means is people we thought we could trust are taking advantage of us. And it's really hard to acknowledge that I was off on my trust meter because I've always been really good at that. So if I'm the person living with dementia, we're going to have to take that into account as the support person who's recognizing something is going on here and doesn't seem legit. I've got to be real careful. And if I haven't done my homework in the past to figure out who's got access to what and who might have access that shouldn't have access, and then know who I can turn to get the support I need to make this happen in a way that doesn't raise alarm bells and create more barriers to support and care that is needed. Tricky.
Now, this whole area is so new that you probably haven't made a DVD of it. I'm not going to let that one go.
Well, yeah, that's going to hang on for several times. What I'd say, though, is we do have some support structures there. We have done some of this because this issue's been around for a long, long time. The numbers are going up, but the issue has been present. So we have some webinars, we have some short segments, we have some Q&As, but we don't have a total fix, but we do have one, Alzheimer's in the courtroom, because we do have issues where people didn't recognize what was going on was dementia. And now we're ending up in court in legal battles. And that's where we never actually want to end up. We don't want to end up in guardianship battles because we missed the mark early and develop our skills to try to reduce the risk that somebody's alone enough to be vulnerable. So there are preliminary things that we want to bring to the table and start conversations way earlier than we think. And that's where consultations come in. Free consultations.
Yeah, I think you might get told to pump the brakes and, don't send in the cavalry yet because you might not know what you're doing and you might just make things irreparably damaged with your loved one.
You got it. And once you build barriers and walls between you, it's hard to get doorways in those brick walls. So really looking at bridging and looking at being supportive and not jamming on the brakes so you go through the windshield without your seatbelt on. So do you have seatbelts? Have you put them in the car? Oh, whoops, we've been operating without any seatbelts. In other words, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney. I don't even know who's in the person's world these days because I have not been present for a bit. Those are all really important things to think about before I move forward into a position where I'm trying to help without having all the details, or at least some, available to me. And that's what the consultation could do for you, is help be curious about that.
Yeah, I can have a cautionary consultation.
Got it.
Maybe don't try that right now.
Let's sort of get curious and let's sort of do some investigating before we move forward, so we don't put our foot in the middle and cause harm instead of support, and then eliminate options as we move forward.
Teepa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
You've been listening to the Dementia Care Partners podcast, brought to you by Positive Approach to Care. For more information, go to teepasnow.com.